Who Knows Nada. My name is Brianna. This is the Mom Who Knows Nada podcast. This conversation got started before we were even ready to begin, so I just hit record. It definitely took a winding road, but I'm really glad it was a surprise. So just tune in. No, I have the same thing too with my mom. It's like she's like, well, I could just this why then I could stay with you, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, could you?
Right.
Because it's not my fault you're 62 and don't have your shit together. Why is that a me thing?
Right.
And I'm not wrong for not wanting you to live with me until you figure it out. That's what you should have done.
Yeah.
After you and my dad divorced, that's what you should have done. It's not on me anymore. Stop it. I already have a kid and a family.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then my dad, jokes and is like, well, I took care of her already, so it's your turn now. And it's like, No,
it's not.
I didn't.
We're the children.
Yeah, I didn't choose you guys. You chose to have us. Right. So that's yeah.
I hear you.
Things like that.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, he was like, okay, pick out the like stuffed animals that represent the people in your family or your life or whatever. Ooh. And so I picked him out, and he was like, now have a conversation with them. And I was like, you need to do this. You need to clean this up. You need to figure this out. You need to. And he was like, can you not parent everyone? And I was like, no, I can't. And he was like, let him fall. Let him figure it out. Let him be. Because
it's hard though when it impacts your life.
Yeah.
I know this is not our topic of conversation, but like when I look at my husband and he's like, and I love him to death and he's wonderful in so many ways. But when he leaves the tornado behind him and goes away for 2 weeks and I'm the one constantly cleaning up the mess, like the literal and figurative mess, I'm like, I shouldn't have to parent a 50-year-old. And then he wonders why I get annoyed.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, it's not that hard to make toast and wipe up the counter. I'm not asking too much of you. I'm not. But it drives me fucking crazy when I have to clean the kitchen in order to make a meal for me and my son after you have exited the premises. Yes, maybe I should let that go, but now I'm spending my time, which now I have to carry the responsibilities of the household while trying to be an entrepreneur, and you can't even fucking have the consideration to clean up the goddamn counter for me.
Yeah.
And your son.
Yeah.
Why does that have to be a fight?
Yeah.
Why can't he just clean up after himself? Why? Why should I have to be the one to let that go?
I say it all the time. I'm like, my hardest kid to raise is my mother-in-law's. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of it. Like, I'm so...
Yeah. Yes. No, I agree with you because I like the therapy and even like I've been working with a life coach. I had to take a pause because money.
Yeah.
but and she's like, and she's got great advice, but I keep coming back to, why do I have to change? Why is it me that needs to grow? And I know it's, the spiritual, emotional journey and I'll be a better person for it, but why is it always me that has to do the work? Why can't someone else do the fucking work?
I stopped doing the work and I was like, here I am. I'm reading books. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm seeing an emotional release counselor. I'm seeing a life coach. I'm getting mentored to write a book, to release all the things that I'm, holding and harboring and trying to get those traumas out of my life of, pregnancy and postpartum and stuff. And what are you doing? Because if you're not going to step out. I'm tired. I'm not going to carry you.
Amen.
Too.
No, and that's what, and everybody's on their own journey, their own place, their own time. I understand that. But I also take a step back, and this is for all the non-childbearing parents. Yeah. Any person who has carried a child had to change their life in T-1 millisecond. You can fucking step up to the plate and change yourself.
Right.
You've had the goddamn time. End of story.
Why are we
End of fucking story.
People, like these partners that aren't willing to meet you at your level?
Yeah. And then it's like, then I can't have, it's like, I guess the argument to that would be, well, just leave, or, and And I 100% get that too. And like I said this to my dad, I was like, I'm trying to do something and be something that I have no idea how to be. Marriages and relationships were not strong in my family. Like there was either, you know, my grandparents, there was like adultery, or like my great grandparents, it just, you know, they were married young. They didn't like each other. They just stayed together because you didn't get divorced.
Yeah.
And you're like, my parents divorced. That's a really good example, you know, of like how to be in a relationship. And my dad and I will joke now, but he was married 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's obviously you are the problem. It's you. It's a common denominator. And like my dad's a good guy and I make fun of him to this day about his marriages. So I feel okay saying that. But it's like, how do you even navigate a relationship when all the relationships around you have been shit?
Yeah. So. I mean, I'll take it one step further. When my grandma was basically like, you know, a few months before passing away, she told me that she fell in love with a man before she married my grandpa. And I said, oh, well, what happened? She was like, oh, your stupid grandpa came back from the military. And we were already engaged. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, so like, was there like back in the day, you know, where you had these connections, but you already committed that you know, you sit and dwell on. And then does the next generation, you know, subconsciously carry that? And then the next generation, and then the next generation. I read an amazing book and I highly suggest it for everyone because this is what like catapulted me was It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And it was just like going back to all of your generational trauma that you may be carrying something and speaking words of someone else that you don't even know, like at all. And it's wild. I think it ties into the 5 love languages a little bit because it's your own inner voice. Instead of like, you know, what are you speaking to yourself and what are you carrying that you don't even know? So it's very, very interesting. But I started all of this honestly because of my Lyme disease, because I was like, I'm not going to get better of chronic illness if I don't heal emotionally and spiritually, and then physically it'll come. But like, there's no miracle drug out there.
No. There's just alleviations.
And Dave was just, you know, shrugging along, and I was like, no, you don't understand. I've been on this journey for like 10 months now, and it's isolating. It's lonely, and you almost go through a cleansing part of it where you feel like everyone around you is toxic and you can't be around it because there's so much that you've uncovered that you can't unsee. And in that like moment, you're so alone, but yet you're in a relationship that you're like, I need you to go through this with me. Like, or you're just in the way. Because your kids deserve healed parents.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. And then and then it's like, if they don't feel like the need to have that journey, it's hard because some people can operate in a partnership where there can be like silos. And to a degree, I kind of understand that. And I agree, like you should be your independent selves and on your independent journeys. But when there is crossover and you're conflicted or there's friction, it's hard to push forward because you do have to parent the kid and you have to be in agreement and how that parenting works. So if you're too siloed off and you're in your own path, then it's like, why are you with this person anyway? You know, if they're not bringing anything to you.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing to say because there's a time and a place, and sometimes people catch up because they're in their own journey. And then other times that's like, there's a disconnect and you have to separate.
But like, let's read the books together. And what did you interpret from that? Or what did you interpret from that? Or, you know, you're gone 85% of the time, and then you come home and you have no idea what you're doing. You have no clue. So you ask me anyways.
Right. But then you're controlling.
Right.
And yeah. You know what? I thought about this actually this week, and I'm like, I need to have a conversation with my husband. But yeah, it is my way, because you're not here half the time, and when you're not here half the time, this is how this house operates. If you can either get on board or get out. If you're gonna leave me 185 days out of the year, then this is how it fucking works.
Yeah.
Got it? Or don't. And that sounds like kind of harsh, but it's like, if this is how we need to operate in order to be functional in your absence, then when you come in and you pick up these pieces, they should be how mommy did them, because they need to be set up for my success when you're not here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And mic drop.
It's so true, because I mean, at the end of the day, we are carrying more sometimes, I feel like, than a single parent. Like, my sister is a single parent, right? And she doesn't have to argue with anyone about how her kid is raised. She doesn't have to have the conversation about, finances or the hard conversations that you had in adding that extra person into the mix. And, I don't think that her journey is any less difficult than mine by any means.
Oh, sure.
But,
for sure.
And I don't wish things, but all my siblings are single parents. And, my brother is the only one that has the other spouse as a co-parent, you know what I mean? Where it's like 50-50 custody. My sister, the dad was never involved. And my brother, his girlfriend just passed away in a car accident. And so it's like, it's so different to watch the dynamic in the four of us and how we're all struggling almost quasi to be single parents. You know what I mean? And it's like, the work is a lot of work.
And that's what they don't pay. I don't think that we've done a good job as a society leading up to now of understanding how difficult it is to be a parent, nor do we really understand how difficult it is to maintain a productive, healthy relationship. Like, no one talks about how hard marriage is. You'll get through it. Same thing like it's like, no. Sometimes you can't get through it. Sometimes you just aren't compatible. Sometimes you procreated because you're idiots.
And why is there this notion of you can't ask for help?
Yeah, I don't know either.
Like, first of all, why is marriage counseling so expensive? Because if you're setting these people up for success, at least have your insurance cover it or something. Like, what am I paying that for, But why are we not why are we not making it fluid enough to ask for help? And like what machismo or like ego are we living in that we think we're know-it-alls, like, but we're so lost, we're afraid to say we're lost.
I think it's a delicate balance too, because I think it's one thing to ask for help. It's another thing to be the toxic drag on people too. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, if there's always a problem in your marriage and there's always something going on in your life, then the common denominator is you, and you are the problem. Yes. Hi, you're the problem. It's you. So, and I say that to myself because I looked up one day and I have a few friends and it's like, there's always some drama. And I'm like, I can't handle your drama anymore. Like, it's just too much, it's too much stuff. And if you're not doing the work to figure out why this drama is consistently in your life, I cannot help you anymore. So I think it's a delicate balance of like asking for help and seeking insight, and seeing how other relationships ebb and flow. But also it's important to realize that maybe there's something that you need to look at in yourself if you keep attracting certain things in your life.
Oh, yeah. And I really think that we need to stop putting so much pressure on our friendship relationships to solve our problems. And I think that using them as a venting tool is amazing.
Right.
But I don't need you to carry my burdens for me.
Right.
Just because we're friends, it doesn't mean that you have to stress out about what's stressing me out. And I carry that over also to my mother, my father, my siblings, because I have my own burdens to bear. You want to vent? That's great. I'll be like a duck on a water, or water off a duck's back, right? Like,
Right.
just get it off your chest and make it,
Right.
release. But I'm not going to carry it for you. I'm not going to solve your
Yeah.
problem. I'm not going to figure it out. I have enough of my own. And if we're focusing too much on other people's problems, then we're not working on ourselves.
Yeah.
We're like, I was using everyone else's stressors in my life to deflect and not work on
Yeah.
myself, because I was like, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm trying, and it was
Yeah.
affecting my sleep. It was affecting my inflammation in my body, my chronic illness. Like, if I didn't get Lyme disease, I would keep spiraling. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Because,
Interesting. Let's get into that.
yeah,
When were you first diagnosed?
yeah.
Now that we've gone down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
A 15-minute rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I got bit in July 2022, which was just a couple months ago. So I was laying in bed with my two kids and my fiance, and I think the dog brought him in, honestly, because it was the middle of the night and I felt a creeper crawler on my stomach, and I really thought that it was like a spider, right? And I was like, just go back to sleep. Like, it's not going to do anything waking up the kids right now, because I had an under 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, so it was like, don't wake the beast, right?
Yeah, okay.
It'll just keep crawling, like, ignore it. And the next morning was a Thursday morning, and I asked my fiance, I was like, can you just check and see if I got bit or anything like that? Like, I think I had a spider on me last night. And he looked and he was like, oh, you have a tick hanging out of you in my rib cage. Yeah.
Oof.
And mind you, I had my daughter on this side and my son was in my arms here. So looking back, like, blessing in disguise, I was the one that got bit, right? Because if my kids would have gotten Lyme disease, I probably wouldn't have known what to do, or it would have been a much different journey. So we pulled the tick out, and I didn't think anything of it. I've had ticks on my body before, and it was just like, throw it away. Ha, you didn't win this battle, right?
Yeah, blow it up. Burn that bugger.
But he won the war. So that was a Thursday morning, and I took a picture of it, and we flushed it down the toilet. Monday, in the middle of the night, I went to get up and get my son out of the crib that was in the room with us, and it was the middle of the night, and I stood up and my knees couldn't hold my weight. I just fell.
Wow.
Yeah. And the next day I woke up and I tried to walk, and I couldn't walk very well. I was so weak, and I started sweating and shivering, and I had this fever, and I was like,
wow,
I know what's going on. So I called the doctor, and I got in almost immediately by that afternoon. And they did a blood test on me, and Lyme disease is extremely controversial. So as I talk about everything, like, there is no like concrete evidence. I just want to let you know, it's what I'm gathering is a lot from other people's experiences, and my own, because we don't focus a lot on Lyme disease, actually. So the blood test for the Lyme disease is only 51% accurate. So my mom's friend had a daughter that went through Lyme disease recently, and she got me in like a group message on Facebook and was like, talk to her, she might have some advice. And right, like, I got my Talo, I put it on there, I was like, haha, I don't have a rash, like, I can't be that bad, and I never got the rash, which only like 25% of people that have Lyme disease get the rash, and I didn't know that. And only a certain percentage gets a fever, and only a certain percentage gets, all of the things. And so, um, she had said if it was my daughter, she's like, I just went through 7 years of this. If it was my daughter, I would go see either this person in Nashville or this person in Memphis. And she was like, but
Mm.
they're natural doctors. They'll be able to get to the root cause of it and they'll be able to support you through it. And she's like, we went conventional medicine for a long time and it was very hard.
Mm.
It didn't do anything for her. And so I ended up contacting the one in Memphis, which is the best doctor I have ever had in my entire life. So I saw him
Mm.
virtually, and I contacted him, I think Thursday of that week, waiting for my blood results to come back. And when I went to, Western medicine and I got my blood work done, they said, we can give you doxycycline, which is an antibiotic. And as we know, I still nurse my kids. So I was
Right.
like, I don't want to necessarily go on an antibiotic. And they said, well, it could be Lyme disease. And the best thing we have for it is an antibiotic. And I said, I fought them because I don't always go to antibiotics as my first line of defense. It's just
Mm-hmm.
who I am. I would rather support my system until I get to a point and then I might ask for help. But um, I, the way that they said, we don't have the blood results back yet, and it could be Lyme disease. It could be some sort of virus we don't know about. It could be, you know, they
Yeah.
checked my white blood cell count. They checked my red blood cell count. They were looking for something very serious. And I was like, okay, but if it's not Lyme disease, I may need that to combat a virus that I don't know about is in my
Right.
body. Or I may need my immune system and then you're going to deplete it. I was like, I just don't feel comfortable. And they were very against my decision. And that's why I ended up going to the naturopathic doctor. I called him and I said, can I get in? And he said, yes, no problem. He immediately called my doctor's office and got the blood results. And the blood results showed no Lyme disease. But
Interesting.
I could still have it. And their suggestion was to still do the antibiotics. And I said, I just don't feel comfortable. There's just something going on. I just don't feel comfortable taking an antibiotic right now. I don't believe that that is the only thing I can do.
Especially if you don't know like what it is. Like, how do
Right.
you know that's the best course of action if you don't know what you're fighting against, you know?
Exactly. So the naturopathic doctor said, put a cotton ball in your mouth for like 5 minutes and I'll do saliva tests on you. And I mailed it to him, and it showed two different strands of Lyme disease. It also
Hmm.
showed EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, and it
The
showed
heck is that?
Mycoplasma pneumonia, which is uh, just like a bacterial infection, basically, in your lungs that mimics
Huh.
walking pneumonia.
Interesting.
And my doctors couldn't find any of that. Right. And I was like, okay, there's a reason I called this guy. There's a reason I listened to my gut. There's always a
Right.
reason. And I'm grateful that, so I worked with him for up until like December of last year. And yeah, I mean, I do about 40 vitamins a day.
Wow. That's a lot.
And I have breathing treatments. Yeah, it's been so crazy. And it goes back to my breastfeeding journey or my
Mm-hmm.
coaching of like going back to instinctively trusting you and your gut. You know what I mean? Of like,
Totally.
you have the answers within you, but why are you seeking outside validation? You know?
Right.
Um, so that was
So
kind of
what's your
testimony.
what what else is in like your treatment regime
Oh
that you
yeah.
still have to do?
Okay, so I have
Oh,
I have 6 of these a day. It's an immune booster, and it just has like zinc, selenium, um, green tea extract, and so 6 of these to support my immune system. I take 4 magnesium a day to help with muscle cramps and things of that nature. I have
wow.
cinnamon vitamins that I take for my blood sugar regulation. Aller DQ is basically like stinging nettle, quercetin, and vitamin C, and that is so that it helps support my lung system.
Fuck. All the systems under fire. Boo, 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 boo.
I know. I have Percoplex, which is basically like turmeric, and that is for the inflammatory system, and I take about 8 of
Wow.
those a day. Calm G, which it has folate, and then GABA, which that is for anxiety because it's freaking a lot to do all of this. Licorice for my adrenal gland because that was depleted. Osteovantive is magnesium, but like a different oxide, which is just different than the other magnesium for my joints.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I have a detox drainage kit that I put like drops into water and I drink 3 times a day. Then I have another detox that I do 3 times a day.
Wow.
I have progesterone because it depleted my progesterone levels and my estrogen is running my body. I
Oh,
have,
that's cool.
yeah, I have EBV drops for that is just like a proprietary herbal blend to support my EBV. Just don't think we're done. I did a whole food antibiotic. Instead of the
Wow.
synthetic antibiotic, this is based off plants. And I did this for, I think it has like wormwood and stuff in it. And I think I did this for about,
Ooh,
um,
absinthe.
yeah, I wish.
Dang
I did this
it.
for about 4 weeks after being diagnosed, and it actually killed the bacteria in my system, which is awesome.
Wow.
And
So
then,
absinthe.
yeah,
For bacteria. Just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding. Don't do that, people.
I mean, and then I have a
Dr.
liver
Carter.
support here. Um, and then I have like a lymph cream I put on my lymph system twice a day to
Do you
help.
make that yourself?
No, my doctor sends it to me. And then I wish, right? And then I do breathing treatments of silver and I do breathing treatments of glutathione.
So what's your long-term like prognosis with all of this stuff?
I'll
What does
have
it
it
look
for the
like?
rest of my life.
There's no way to get rid of
There's
it
no way to get rid of it.
once you have it.
What I have learned
Lyme?
is if you support your immune system properly and you reduce inflammation in your body, your immune system can keep it dormant.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so on this journey,
I mean, I got more questions, so.
on this journey is how I figured out, like talking to people, basically, I have learned
Yeah.
that your mind controls so much of your life, honestly.
Stupid brain.
I know. And I met this woman that had Lyme disease. She actually went down the path of doxycycline. It worked for a couple months, and then she relapsed, which I would say 95% of the time that people take doxycycline for Lyme disease, that's what happens. Then you end up on doxycycline on a drip in your IV, and you're completely bedridden. She was bedridden for 4 years
Ooh, that sucks.
at her mom's house. Not where you want to be.
Give me the Lyme disease. Give me the. Oh, just
vitamins. You know. So she did this program called DNRS, Dynamic Neuro Retraining System. And what it does is it's a 6-month program, but you basically like watch DVDs and you are given the power to retrain your brain to not live in fight or flight, to naturally reduce the inflammation in your body so that your immune system is like has the ability to combat and put these things back in dormant. And so
fancy.
I know this girl, she was bedridden for 4 years, like I said, and she had done this program, and in the first 2 weeks she was walking again. And I had met her a year later, and she was not only walking and healthy and fine and everything was great, but she was also engaged, which she had never even tried to date before. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And
yeah,
I've heard of people call it like the lucky girl syndrome or the lucky person syndrome. And it's like basically taking this woe is me situation, or I'm constantly in this dwelling moment, and switching it to I'm blessed, I'm grateful, I'm journaling, I'm healthy, I'm winning this war. Like, or I'm manifesting these great things.
Right.
And so this is why I got a life coach. This is why I got the emotional and trauma release therapist. This is why I got a mentor to write a book. And this is why I did the protocol for the better part of 5-6 months. And then I said, I need a break because I don't want to overload my system on something else either.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just
makes sense.
I'm not saying that like pharmaceuticals are bad or vitamins are bad, but too much of anything can be bad. You know what I mean? And so what if I'm already stressing out about my protocol that I have to take daily and all these vitamins and eat this schedule so that I can take this and do this and the different, like, is that also adding stress to my life?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I went off of all of that, and for the last like 2 months, and I've really been walking the journey of just spiritual, emotional, finding more inner peace and calm. Part of the reason why all of this is happening is because I can't calm my system enough to eat a good meal. And am I depleting the nutrients I am putting in my body because I'm in such fight or flight? My body doesn't even know what to absorb. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
interesting point.
I have taken a break from all of it, and I did that specifically with so much research and education. Like I'm not sitting here saying that like my path is your path, like by any means. But I do think that there is something to be said that we do have more power within us than we even give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
You know, so
I think it's really easy to get lost into, I'll say, the science of things. Like, but what we forget is that we are each a unique chemistry set. So like what works for me might not work for other people. And it's the same like in parenting. Just because one parent rears their child one way doesn't mean it works for somebody else, because we all have different needs. So I think it's always good to put the information out there, but just know it's like the people who get diagnosed with cancer and then they totally kind of like what you're saying. They must have like an acceptance of it and they just change their lifestyle, and then they're like inexplicably cancer free because they've just used like plants as medicine. And you're just like, you know, when your immune system is in fight or flight mode, like you're talking about, and if you're adding to that with like highly processed foods, which we know are bad, or you're stressed because of a relationship and all of these things play into it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's only going to magnify the situation.
Yeah.
So, and
Tenfold.
it really does start from, yeah. And it, and again, and everybody has a different threshold for what causes them stress and anxiety. I think mine's really, really high now. So I can handle all the things. Not really. Don't fuck with me, universe. But you get to a certain point where even my husband's like, why are you so calm? And I'm like, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it?
Right.
I'm going to be angry for 5 seconds. I'm going to throw my tennis racket across the court and I'm going to be over it. Because I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hear you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, I got to a point where I was walking around and like I would have this, horrific cough, right? From my walking pneumonia, basically, that wasn't contagious. And I would just like chuckle and I would be like, oh, I'm not sick. I'm chronically ill. Because you don't want to look at someone and be like, it's okay. Right.
Especially now.
Exactly. And so it was like retraining myself of like, am I chronically ill or am I giving that too much power?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. Ooh, it's such a tricky one too, because there's definitely people who obviously there's something going on.
Right.
But how much of it is within our control by letting go? Ooh. That's such what a like dichotomy. That's a juxtaposition if I've ever heard one. Like, how can we be in control by letting go? Oof, I got to marinate on that.
Yeah. So Lyme disease is actually known as the great imitator. And the way that I see it is that it finds weak points in your body that you didn't know were weak, and it just goes and lives in there. Like it just nestles right in there, and that's where it lives now, right? And so there has been links, and I'm not saying that I have any medical backing on this at all. It's just things that I have been researching and watching, and how other doctors that think outside the box a little bit on different spectrums have discovered that it imitates other sicknesses. So think on larger scale: fibromyalgia, ALS, something that they know nothing about. And I can say that because my aunt passed away from ALS, and we all went, oh no, is it genetic? And they said, we don't know enough about it. And it's like you have these, she had a whole neurology team in San Francisco at UCSF, and they literally, there was like 15 doctors, and they said, we don't know enough about the disease. We don't know enough about ALS to tell you. And I was in on all the appointments, like I know. And so some of these other doctors that come from like Harvard and different places are starting to think outside the box, and they're really honing in on what is Lyme disease and what does it mimic, because it is known as the great imitator. So what it did for my body, and that's why you will always find different co-infections for different people, because it'll find your weakness and it'll go in and live in there. And so for me personally, that's why some will get a rash, some will get this, some will get, the fever, some will have different symptoms. For me, I was so postpartum still, I think, that it found my weak points in my joints, in my lymphatic system, because I was still detoxing all of the stuff from being pregnant and having a C-section. It depleted my adrenal gland because I was already tired from being a mom and everything. It depleted my progesterone because, once again, I was still healing my hormones from being pregnant and postpartum. It attacked my lungs because I am an asthmatic. And so with all of that being said, it imitated all of these other autoimmune diseases or other sicknesses that if I would have gone a different route, I might have been diagnosed different.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
you know? So,
how has this impacted motherhood for you?
oh my God.
Should I go get another cup of coffee?
I mean, get the pot.
Can only brew one at a time. Stupid Keurig.
I know. It's been hard. It's been really, really, really hard. There's, my daughter is my mini me. Literally, like
Mm-hmm.
when I was massively pregnant with my son, um, after a couple months of, waddling around and saying, "Oh, I'm in so much pain," we actually had to take her to the doctor because we thought she had something wrong with her stomach. And she was like, "No, she's just mimicking what you do." Like, I'm pregnant, I'm fat. Like, so,
Wow, that's something there.
yeah. So, there are times where, and it's not as frequently anymore, which is great, but there are a lot of times where if I am very active, um,
Mm-hmm.
I can't walk very well. I have to like
Hmm.
hold on to the walls as I walk because my joints and my knees are so weak that I feel like I'm gonna collapse. So I'll catch her walking along the wall like I do.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I'll catch her saying like, "I'm just so sick right now." And it's a direct reflection of, which is why I'm really
Yeah.
trying to like change my narrative on so much, is because I have a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There was one day I was very, 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 very active, and this was maybe like 2 months ago, right? I think it was like Christmas and her birthday and moving and like running my businesses and like everything. And I just hit a wall and I couldn't really walk. And I was feeling so depleted of all of my energy and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And she was in her room playing and she's like, "Mom, will you come play with me?" And I was like, "Oh, honey." And she was like, "Let me guess, you're sick." She's like, "Are you ever going to be better so you can play with me?" And I was like, it broke my heart, which is why I started looking into how I'm perceiving this, because this is how
Right.
she's perceiving this, right? Like, I can't control the fact that I have a chronic illness, but I can control and navigate how I respond to it.
Yeah. Totally.
So, um, parenting through Lyme disease has been like everything I didn't know I needed.
Interesting. Huh.
Like, I needed to know that I was idolized that much. I was seen by this little human being so much that she
Mm-hmm.
saw and reflected directly of who I am.
Dun, 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 dun.
I know, which is, part of the emotional journey that I've been
Mm-hmm.
on. Because I'll never be a perfect parent. I'll never be a perfect
Right.
parent. But I can at least try to be better than I am today, tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I can
Yeah, that's a good point.
apologize more. I can be human more. I can uh, work very hard to give her tools that I didn't know I needed,
Mm-hmm.
and just
And you didn't
change.
have before.
I didn't have
Yeah.
before, you
Yeah,
know.
totally.
I can work on my emotional responses, my physical responses,
Mm.
my immediate responses. Because sometimes, we just fly off the handle and they go, "Oh
Yep.
no, shouldn't have
Oopsies.
done that."
I do that
And
with Declan all the time in parking lots. Yeah. I'm like, just listen to me right now. You're going to be smooshed.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes mommy needs to use her strong voice.
exactly. And so recently, she was my daughter, like I think a week or two ago, she was going to do like flips on the ground where she was like doing
Mm-hmm.
somersaults. And she goes, "Hang on a second." She goes, I can do anything, and went and did them. And I was like, yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, like that's what I'm doing now, right? Instead of like dwelling on this, oh, I'm not sick, I'm just chronically ill. It's like I can do it. And she's
Yeah.
seeing it. She's, I mean, my son's only 18 months, so he's doing everything she's doing.
Right.
Um,
Osmosis.
yeah, exactly. So I think in parenting, it has given me um, more tools. I've slowed
Mm.
down. I've stopped living so
Mm.
much in fight or flight, which has been less of, come on, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. We're gonna be late. We gotta do this. We gotta do that. We gotta, or like slamming my schedule so that I'm living like this.
Right. Yeah.
And we're slowing down. Back on President's Day, my daughter looked at me and goes, Mom, can we just have a rest day? And I was like, wow, the fact that you're 4 years old, you're listening to your inner self saying, I've been going a lot. I need to just
Yeah.
hang out was like such a good, like, because,
Yeah. Okay.
because,
Okay, kid.
yeah, I wanted the rest day as much as she did, And so
Right.
it was just like to be able to sit back and be like, yeah, the holidays were busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's just hang out. Let's just be in this moment right now.
Right.
And so I think parenting with Lyme disease, my daughter parents me more than I parent her.
I mean, that's so true. There's so many things you learn when you have kids, and then you like realize, oh, you're here as much to teach me as I am here to teach you, you little shit.
Oh my gosh. And
Little jerk.
learning that just because it's her way, it's not the wrong way. Or just because it's not my way, it's not the wrong
Right.
way. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have to take pauses sometimes, and I'm like, okay, you're about to be a jerk, so maybe just shut your mouth and listen to your child. The other day, I don't know what, I was get out of the shower and we had to go to swimming, and Declan didn't want to turn off the TV, and I said, you have to turn the TV off. Mommy's getting a shower. We're going to be late today. And he's sitting at the end of the bed when I got out of the shower, and he's just crying. And we were already late for swimming, so. And I'm just there in a towel, and I'm like, why are you crying? He's like, I'm having big feelings. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I got to sit down and talk to you, right? Because I wanted to be mad because we needed to get out the door. And he's just crying, we're just having big feelings, Mommy. And I'm like, okay, let's sit down. Let's talk about it. But I was like, oh, man.
That's amazing.
He just... I know, he just needed to pause, and he needed me to pause with him, and I'm like, I don't want to pause. Zen.
Oh, yeah.
So I hear that. Kids are great for all of those things.
Yeah. And
What about, go ahead.
I don't stress so much about being late anymore. I'm like, I'm retraining my view and inevitably her view of it's important to be there, but it's not so important that you have to lose yourself.
Right.
Like, because
Yeah.
I would so stress out about being late that I would start screaming and let's go. I'm just gonna put you in the car.
Yeah.
You haven't peed yet. I don't care. Let's go. You should have done that. And then that's putting so much on her of like, you're carrying my reaction because
Mm-hmm.
I am freaking out about something that realistically shouldn't, like, yes, teach time management. Cool. But like, there are
Right.
so many
Yeah.
better ways I can do that. So I got her a watch and I said, okay, when we leave for school, it needs to be at this time. Can you help me get ready by this time so that we're on time? And then it's like giving her a responsibility instead of
Right.
putting my like drastic freak out
Yeah.
and make it her responsibility that she doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
understand that she's I needed to control that.
Yes, that's a really good point. And because I do that with Declan sometimes, but he doesn't understand time yet. He's just getting there.
Right.
And I'm trying to teach him responsibility. He'll leave everything in the car, and then there's like 8 water bottles under the seat, and then there's no water bottles to take to school. And so today we get in the car, and I looked at him because I was looking for water bottles. And there's 2 of them in the back seat. And I said, Declan, you need to take your stuff out of the car. If you want to use these things, you need to take them out. It's your responsibility. Mommy can't carry everything. And we have this, it's such a delicate balance in like putting certain things that are on them that aren't theirs to carry, and then teaching them ownership of problems. And I struggle with this because I take so much ownership, and my husband assumes no accountability. Like it's everybody else's problem to deal with. And somewhere in there, in the middle, is where we need to meet. But we're so different with things. Like I assume everything. This is just how I grew up. I have that like Catholic guilt. Everything was my fault. And so I'm trying to teach him responsibility and ownership to a degree, but I'm trying also not to put stuff on him that's mine. And it's so hard.
I was the oldest of 4. So and they're 5, 6, and 7 years younger than me. So I was the driver. I was the babysitter. I was quasi.
No wonder you parent everybody.
Yeah, I do. Like bad.
Well, it's also how you're kind of conditioned at a certain point in time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember when I was in my early 20s, my brothers were driving and they took their truck. It was like a muddy after rain, and they drove and did figure eights on the baseball field. And my mom,
Jesus.
Yeah, they're 16 and 14 years old or something. So it was just they were boys.
Being boys. Being dumb boys.
Yeah. And my mom goes, I'm going to call your dad. And they're like, fine, call my dad. And my mom was like, I'm going to call your sister. And they're like, no, please don't tell Meagan. It was like, I assumed that role very, very young. And so now I'm 35, trying to release myself, forgive myself, give myself grace that I don't have to carry everyone's burdens.
Yeah.
So it's been.
Ooh, it's interesting how it all kind of ties together, because I've talked to your sister before about some of her stuff, and I'm actually talking to an HMR, I can't remember, like therapist and like a hypnotist this time kind of too, and she deals like with it, and this that's coming the cheese, there you go, people. And talking about how the body stores trauma, and I've talked about that with your sister, and so I'm kind of excited to have it come like full circle. But it's interesting how certain things like manifest, and how certain things like change and don't change, like when you want them to, like for me right now, it's like, I can't lose baby weight. And I'm wondering, like, what is it that I'm holding on to that's keeping me 20 pounds heavier? And it's not necessarily the number on the scale. It's like how you feel in your skin. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, well, what is it that I'm not letting go of in order to get to where like I want to be? It's not like I'm not active. I play tennis 2 to 3 hours a day. I take the dog on 4 walks a day, like especially when my husband's on him. So it's not like so it's like, what is it that's manifest, like I haven't manifested? Do you know what I mean? I think you can kind of understand, and how like all of that stuff in our brain, and even like unconscious or subconscious things that we're tethered to, how that really impacts our day-to-day life. And we're not even of the awareness to know that that's what it is, and that it is all within our control. How do you level up? How do you level up, you know?
So I didn't even, and it's crazy how things come into your life too, because when you mentioned hypnotherapy, I got bit in July and my daughter started school in August. I had met the teacher one time. She seemed like a very nice person. I was, Harley wanted to go to school, and for whatever reason, this was the only school we checked out, and we were like, yeah, it's hippie enough for us. Like, they'll get the kids out and learn too in life instead of just in a classroom, which is what I what I was worried about. And so a couple months into school, I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry she was late. I just, I have Lyme disease, and it was a really, really hard morning for me, and so like, I'm sorry. And she goes, oh, I have Lyme disease. And we get to talking, and she had been bedridden for 3 years, and
Hmm.
she did the doxycycline, just the medication, like pill form. And then she was fine for a few months, and then she relapsed really bad, which is from the consensus. That is what I understand is what happens, right?
Mm.
Because it just kind of puts a band-aid on it, but it doesn't address what's going on in your system,
Yeah.
and that's why I didn't want
Got
to
it.
go that route. So she ended up being on an IV of doxycycline in the hospital, and she was bedridden for about 3 years. But there was about a year where she was in and out of the hospital, was in a wheelchair. She couldn't, her organs started failing, specifically like her kidney and her liver started failing.
Wow.
And she was having, like, they were saying, like, this is probably the best her life is going to get for quite a while. And she grew up in Florida. She ended up finding a naturopathic doctor in Idaho, and
Wow.
seeing him, and she still sees him on like a maintenance schedule or whatever, like once a year. Um, but what she did and what she told me had helped her tremendously and got her walking within a couple weeks was hypnotherapy.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that like even hypnotherapists and hypnotists will tell you it's not one size fits all. That's just life,
right.
Like so it is going to be really interesting to hear this
Uh-huh.
because I know nothing about it. I'm like, oh, good. I have to do some research for this one.
Right. Right.
But like my
Um,
husband thinks I'm crazy because I do all like and I talk about this a lot, acupuncture, chiropractics, and trying to find my meditation and stuff like with yoga. I can't sit still, so it's really hard. So like yoga is my like form of like if I can find that inner headspace, like to breathe and
mhm.
focus, that's really helpful to me. But I like my argument always is there's a reason that acupuncture and is still around for after thousands of years. So I mean, there's something to it.
Right.
Just saying.
And
Just anyway.
like going back to like trauma in your body, I was noticing, so I've brought up a few times, I have anger issues. Like I
Hmm.
will very quickly fly off the handle if I don't control myself or
Mm.
do my breathing practices or whatever. And my dad has anger issues and will fly off the handle. And my siblings too. Like we all, and my grandma had it. And so we all just were like, oh, yeah, it's that Schreiber trait, like
Mm.
whatever.
Oh,
And as I continued down, like reading the books and figuring out what emotions we harbor or carry or trauma or in our organs or whatever,
yeah.
anger is direct in Chinese medicine. Anger is directly connected to the liver. The liver,
Oh, interesting.
I know, and the liver is
Interesting.
what is controlling my lymphatic system right now, which is backed up.
Huh. It's also interesting. I was doing a podcast for the literacy thing the other day, and this woman, Dr. Eleanor Winch, you can look her up, and she works a lot with like women in particular and young children. And one of her like signing off things was what happens between the ages of 4 and 8 is where your child will really learn because you have like those synapses that have started to form and this is where they start to solidify. And her whole thing was, and it really made me stop and think because is it an anger issue? Is it a family trait? Is it genetics? Or is it a learned behavior that we have conditioned ourselves to accept? I personally believe it's the latter. And it really like when she said that, I stopped and I was like, oh shit, like I really have to be mindful of what I'm doing to my kid, or I'm only going to perpetuate a generational situation, even inadvertently, even though I've made steps, like I'm not abusive. I don't beat my son. I do raise my voice to him, and if I'm wrong, I do apologize, which is things I never got as a kid. But it doesn't mean that I'm breaking the cycle, because if I'm just flying off the handle at him, he is solidifying that behavior is okay in certain circumstances, when in fact it's not. And I need to be cognizant of that. And of course, there's the things where like, your kid's like running into the street. Like my dog this morning decided he just wanted to sprint across the street.
Yeah.
I'm like, Dionysus, no!
Right.
You know, you have to, like, I get it. And it should trigger them to stop, right? But there's definitely instances where mommy needs to sit down after the shower and talk about big feelings, because that's the synapse that I want to solidify.
Yes.
So it's interesting that you say that, because literally I'm like talking to this child life psychologist person. I don't know exactly what her academia career was, but it's something like that. And I was like, oh God, this is so poignant. And nobody tells you that in parenting. So this is me telling people that this is what I learned from someone who did it for like 40 years. And I'll send you just that clip. The podcast is up. But yeah, so anyway, and to your point.
Exactly. And it's like, this is what I'm trying. How can I sit there and tell my 4-year-old or 1.5-year-old or little person in my life, you can't throw a temper tantrum, but here I am.
I mean, I wish I could throw more temper tantrums in public.
I mean, I am very okay with throwing them in my house more than I should sometimes, you know? And it's like,
okay,
they're not a bigger person to not throw they can't control that. And obviously I can't either, but I'm working on it. And the only way that they'll learn is, one, you sit down and you have that big feelings, or two, you let them have it and are there for them afterwards.
Yeah. And modeling, like, anytime Declan gets upset or he wants to, I'm like, okay, go in your room where it's safe. If you want to throw something because you're frustrated, go upstairs and throw a pillow at the wall, because otherwise we could hurt somebody or we could hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
And I still say that to him, because we all get frustrated, and we all, you know, we're conditioned to behave a certain way, and expected to behave a certain way. But for a lot of us, that wasn't the behavior that was modeled to us. No. And it wasn't how we were actually conditioned. It was do as I say. I know. Do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, which is fucking horseshit to a degree. And, you know, it's like, oh, when you get to be an adult, then you can, like Declan today, you know, why can't I have wine? I'm like, well, it's not good for your brain. Your brain is still developing. Yeah. But mommy's brain is shot, so she can have all the wine, okay? There's no hope for her. And it's the same kind of thing. I know, right? Exactly. I ain't sharing with you, kid. I ain't fucking with you. And you little stupid ass bitch. Sorry, that song just pops into my head. And so just that idea, like, once you get to a certain age, you can have or behave a certain way. Well, for a lot of things, no. Being an asshole because your parents were an asshole to you isn't really cool. Yeah. You know, it's not like graduating to wine because you've turned 18, or in other countries 16, or whatever it is. Like in our country, it's 21. So to me, it's like there are certain things you get to do as you get older because you're showing responsibility and da-da-da. But then it's like, you don't get to be a dick just because someone was a dick to you. Like, that's your job to figure that shit out and be a better human being. I digress.
And you know what I also stopped doing was apologizing to other people that she had a temper tantrum in public. Because that immediately, when I'm like, oh, honey, it's okay, talk to me, I'll be there for you, and then turning and being like, oh, I'm so sorry, that immediately invalidates everything that you're trying to build with her. That immediately invalidates her entire feelings. Because you're looking at someone and saying, oh, I'm sorry, she was a human being and had emotions for a minute. Like,
right. But that's a really good point. I think, especially as women, we're conditioned to do that. We grow up saying, and I I don't tell Declan to say I'm sorry unless if it was an accident.
Yeah.
Like if he throws a ball and someone walks in the path and he hits him, I say I didn't mean to do that.
Right.
Because he is sorry that it happened, but it was an accident. We don't need to apologize for things that aren't really, it's not his fault. You know what I mean? It's different when he needs to feel remorse for something that might have been intentional, or I'm trying to think of like a good example that I can't. But I apologize so much for everything. And I'm like, I do not want my son apologizing for being a human.
Right.
I don't need him to learn that from me. So I don't have him apologize unless he really needs to apologize.
And what is this stranger in my life?
Yeah, fuck you.
Like, worth more than my child's feelings in that moment.
Right.
Am I embarrassed?
Yeah.
I mean, sure. But at the same time, it's like, I need to stop living in this notion of we need to like close it off. We need to act a certain way. We need to mind our P's and Q's, because what is that doing? It's going right back internally. We're carrying the extra 20 pounds postpartum.
Yeah.
We're living with this, Lyme disease that our immune system is just over compromised. We go into this fight or flight or freeze. And, and then we're perpetuating a situation that she will inevitably inherit in her later years, and it'll become an issue for her later. And so how can I, as a parent with a chronic illness, rewrite the narrative?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because it's like, you said something, and I don't know if I'm going to get my full thought, but it's not like we're changing it if we're teaching our kids to do it. And why do we even feel the need, or why do we even feel embarrassed when our kid has a temper tantrum or does something wrong or whatever? Like it's like, don't they need to learn? And how do you learn? By making mistakes or acting out of line. So, and why do we even care what that person is thinking? Yeah. You know what I mean?
And is this giving like a notion
their opinion just,
of like
their opinion doesn't
perfectionism
matter,
that they'll never live up
right?
to?
Yeah. And I think it's even more important to decondition girls. And I think it's also really hard too for guys to understand, because there's certain things that they never had to, never will have to think about. And for our daughters, I think it's really hard to take a step back and realize all the ways that we were conditioned through society.
And to be people pleasers.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with like my specific upbringing as well. But I also think that when you take a step back and look at society and the inferences and the way even like cartoons or characters are portrayed, and you can see a bit of a shift now, but there's still like, there's still some very glaring differences that for women that guys never have to deal with. And it's just being like, no, we're going to change that. Thank you. Come again.
We blame everything on the women. You're wearing that and it's inappropriate. Oh, really? Let's have that conversation. I dare you.
Yeah. It's how come it is like to a degree,
like you were saying, you're the nagging wife instead of your husband being irresponsible and not wiping down the counter.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Why is it me? I do think everything is a fine line though. You don't want your kid going into school with Daisy Dukes and like a bra on like that. To a degree, you have to take some ownership of dressing responsibly, but I don't see anything wrong with baggy pants and a crop top. Like who cares if your belly button's showing? If your boobs aren't in someone's face, like this is all age appropriate. You don't need your 16-year-old daughter walking around like she just got off, a shift at the strip club. 100%. Equally, a 26-year-old woman, go right the fuck ahead. Teach your sons, moms of sons, how to be respectful. You can pay a woman a compliment if she's looking fine, whether she's got clothes on or barely anything. Like, I just think that it's such a delicate, it's always such a fine line, because you should have the freedom to express yourself. And that goes both ways. And if you don't like the attention that you're getting, it's not necessarily a you thing, but could you tweak it a bit where I don't know, because that just kind of sounds, do you know what I mean though? It's just such a fine line.
And it's also like breastfeeding.
Well, yeah.
Stop sexualizing things that are not made to be sexualized also as a society.
Yeah.
Like, if we're just out there feeding a child, we should be inclined to feel comfortable to feed said child.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be a thing. You know what I mean? If I see like breastfeeding women, like I just look at their faces. It's not that hard.
I tell them
you
good
can
job.
Talk to somebody.
I tell them good job.
Just like you don't have to look at what they're doing. You can look at them as a human being in their face, because that's where you should be looking anyway. Just a note.
I tell them good job, because that is probably the hardest thing they ever accomplished.
Getting comfortable. I was in Texas first started out breastfeeding, and it took me a while to get comfortable. Like, and it was also because Declan would have trouble latching to start too, but it did take me a minute to get comfortable. And then, like, when I reflect, I was like, why was I uncomfortable?
Yeah.
You know, and it was because I didn't want to cause a scene, and I didn't want to be, you know, and I was like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, I should have known.
I would get told, like, oh, do you want to go in the guest room? There's a really nice couch in there. And then, like, I was missing out on everything. And so finally I just started nursing at the table or something. And then, oh, do you want No, I'm actually involved in this exact situation right now. We're having a conversation. So it's like, good job for overcoming whatever you needed to overcome to get to this point, because not a lot of people will or do, you know?
Yeah.
But
it's
also like going back to a narrative. I'm like, I'm in this, I'm honing in so much in like our inner voice right now. And like the narrative of, you know, joking, I'm not sick, I'm chronically ill. Or, I can't help it, my dad was like that. Oh, it's just the Schreiber trait. You know, and are we justifying bad behavior because it's just what we knew? Yeah. You know, and so I've recently stopped saying I'm on a healing journey. I'm not broken. I'm not broken. I'm growing.
Yeah.
I'm
evolving.
Rediscovering myself in different ways.
Yeah.
But I'm not broken.
Absolutely.
I'm not a broken human being. And that is okay.
Yeah.
And like, you know, even overusing the word trauma. I did not get raised, actually, in my opinion, a traumatic childhood. Adulthood, that's different. But childhood, I had a pretty dang good childhood. Did my dad fly off the handle every once in a while? Sure. Was he human? Sure. Like, did my mom run us in fight or flight mode all the time because there was 4 of us and she was by herself with a traveling salesman husband? Yeah, sure. But did she do what she could, you know, in the moment or whatever? Is she human?
Yeah.
Sure. But I'm not traumatized by it.
Right.
I am rewriting my narrative.
Yeah, I like that. I also think it's interesting because somebody asked me, like, well, because my mom was really abusive, and like, well, how can you forgive her? I was like, she did the best she could for where she was.
Right.
With the tools she had. And I'm not excusing her behavior at all by any means. But like as a parent now, and this was before I even had Declan, and we had, I could understand she did what she knew.
Yeah.
And that's how she knew to control and to rear children, was to get them to be fearful of you. That's how she was raised.
My mom still does it with the grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, my mom has changed. Otherwise she would not be allowed around her grandson 100%. And she knows that.
Yeah.
Now she like overcompensates. I'm like, do not give him red dye 40, please. Thank you.
Well, she'll say
no M&Ms. No M&Ms.
My mom would be like, you don't talk to me like that. And I'm like, what makes you any better than any other human on the earth?
Right. Yeah.
Like, so she still tries every once in a while. Like, you don't tell me no. Well, they're telling everyone else no. What makes you this special being?
Right, exactly.
But
And
she
the
was
kids
so
need to
outnumbered by children. That was her response, right? So it is.
And I like the boundary thing too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like kids need to, we condition kids to accept certain things. And if a kid is giving you a boundary, you need to be respectful of that. Like Declan, when I tickle him, I try really hard to listen to him, even though I love his laugh, because he's telling me, no, mommy, don't tickle me.
I know.
So, and you think it's silly, but I think about, as a woman, how many times I was in situations that I didn't want to be in because I didn't know how to enforce a boundary.
Yeah.
And how many poor decisions did I make because I didn't know how to enforce a boundary, or I felt like it was my fault, or I felt, so many different things that got me in situations that I was like, I can't believe I got in this situation.
I can
Thank God I have a guardian
it
angel.
because I don't have a voice to say this is not acceptable.
Yeah. And I don't, and so now as a parent, and now it's like, and my husband's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I found my boundary. I found my voice, and I'm gonna fucking use it. I don't care if you're my husband or not. This is it.
Yeah.
Because as a mom, I have to give that to my child.
Yes.
I have to.
Yeah.
I am no offense to my husband because he's working his ass off for the family, but I am the primary caregiver, particularly when my husband is away.
Yeah.
If Declan doesn't find his voice with my guidance, he's going to go through the same fucking things that I did. Boy, doesn't matter if he's, heterosexual, homosexual, whatever he ends up being.
Human.
He needs to find his, whatever human path he's taking. If I don't give him allow him to have his voice, he's not going to find it till it's late. And he's going to have to go through so much shit he didn't need to.
And on the other end of that spectrum, listening and respecting other people's voices through it too.
Yeah, exactly. And just by dumb things like the floor is lava is like the latest thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and we're playing with the neighbor's kids in the pool, and Declan wants to play floor is lava. And then the older kids are done with it. Okay. They're not listening. Oh, well, Declan, I think they've told you that they're done playing floor is lava. So let's either move on and do your own game or partake in whatever they're doing. The choice is yours. Like, they said their piece. Now you can say your piece.